You know, League has a magical world. To Riot, it serves as a playground for their imagination. They can truly make anything there. Insane murderers, genocidal tyrants, soul-consuming torturers. But don't you dare make a fictional alien character attracted to her own gender. That is clearly crossing the line. Hello everyone and welcome to a video where we cover two pieces of the new Runeterra jungle update. That's right, the latest lore update uncovered the last piece of unmapped Shurima, the Kumungu jungles. The biggest part of this update is a story about an expedition into these jungles, by none other than Noxians. But we will save that story for next time, because with the release of Neeko it is more important to cover everything about her first. Well, I say as this video is already a little bit late. Now, if you missed the base story of Neeko, you might want to go back and watch her video first. Because in this video we will cover the story that expands Neeko's bio. Then we'll have a look at Nidalee's bio and we'll round it up with Nidalee's short story. That way we should have all the information to see what binds these two characters together. And especially since we now know about Neeko's interests, hopefully we will learn about what's happening between these two. So without further ado, let's start with the story, The Monster of Kalduga Outpost. This story starts months after Neeko escaped the destruction of her homeland and arrived in the Kumungu jungles. But it also happened after she parted her way with Nidalee. At this point she was familiar with humans, but she still didn't understand some of their quirks. For example, socks seemed pointless to her. So after she arrived at a Noxian outpost in Kalduga, she decided to learn more about humans herself. She wondered if these Noxians were friendly or if they enjoyed cheese breads, but approaching them directly would be unwise, so she did it the only other way she knew. Under the cover of night, she sneaked to the main gate. A single guard stood watch, which wasn't a problem for Neeko. She reached out with her Shoma, her deep spiritual essence, and mimicked the guard's spirit. At that point she knew everything. The guard's name was Ewai. She was from across the desert. Just like Neeko, Ewai also lost her home. Neeko also sensed what Ewai thought about this very outpost. A backwater nowhere outpost with no strategic value. But she couldn't tell that to the commander. Neeko then morphed into Ewai's shape. Dark skin, oval eyes and surprisingly strong body. Even though nobody took her seriously because Ewai was Mudheel, which was a term for a simple soldier. This manipulation of Shoma dizzied the real Ewai, which gave Neeko a window to sneak beyond the gates. But right as she got inside the outpost, an angry plumpy guard shouted at her. He wasn't happy that Ewai wasn't at her post. Neeko put on her best impression of Ewai's voice and stated that she heard noises. At first, the plumpy guard said that it was probably furtails, and that they should hunt them down for meaty pie. But Neeko said it wasn't furtails, because she didn't want to eat the funny little creatures. The guard's eyes widened as he asked Neeko if there were intruders then. Now, Neeko didn't know what that word meant, so just like any of us would do in that situation, Neeko just shrugged and nodded. She thought nothing bad could happen. But that wasn't the case, as the heavy guard jumped to his feet and ordered Neeko to raise the alarm. Obviously, Neeko didn't know how to do that, let alone what even is alarm. So out of disbelief, the guard said that he would do it himself, and that she should have the physician check her brain later. With that, the guard packed all the snacks in his pockets and ran off. But before he got too far away, Neeko quickly replaced Ewai's Shoma with his. She quickly took on his plumpy appearance, together with his recent memories. His name was Ubers, a man who didn't enjoy being near the front lines of war, so instead he stayed here in Kalduga, where it was quiet. When Ubers was gone, Neeko decided to explore the place. Maybe she would find some food. So she headed down a hallway filled with doors. Moments later, she heard shouting coming from the main yard, so she got to the closest window and peeked outside. It was real Ubers shouting at real Ewai. Suddenly, loud alarm bells echoed throughout the settlement, and all the doors in the hallway burst open, with half-dressed Noxian soldiers pouring outside. Neeko, still looking like Ubers, tried to avoid the stampede, but she was swept along and pushed into the main yard. Outside, Ubers and Ewai were still arguing, but it wasn't until Ubers ordered the guards to throw Ewai into a prison as a traitor that Ubers noticed Neeko as Ubers in the crowd. Before Ubers and the other soldiers could blink away their late-hour double vision, Neeko disappeared into a fog of another soldier. This time she was Sedas, a soldier killing machine born in the desert. But it didn't take long before the real Sedas jumped at Neeko, and the two wrestled in the crowd. When everything settled down, only one Seda remained. The real one, of course. She was placed in chains, but when she pointed out that a moment ago there were two Ubers as well, Ubers was placed in chains too, and Ewai followed. This continued for a while. Chains went on, chains went off, nobody was sure who was who and who wasn't who. Even the outpost commander was confused about this mess. And he was the one Neeko didn't even clone. So suddenly everyone became suspicious of him. They thought he orchestrated this, and that he secretly controlled some kind of monster. And it didn't help that, as Neeko learned from their Shoma, everyone hated the commander for his secrets. So it didn't take long before the commander was the first to die. But he certainly wasn't the last. A long night of questioning and accusing one another followed, and bodies fell left and right. Neeko, now looking like a cook named Tomsi, even tried to calm everyone down by saying that maybe this invader isn't a demon. Maybe it's just a lost creature that wants to eat cheese breads. But everyone now knew this was the imposter, and Tomsi the cook's body followed. In the end, only 4 soldiers remained, with Neeko watching them from safe distance. Uber straightened up and told them his plan. They would send out a messenger badge to command, saying that the wild men have overrun Kalduga, and that they don't expect any survivors. After that, they would part their ways. Seda would go north, Gurnek east, Ewai west, and Uber south. And if they ever cross their paths, it would be a duel to death, because one of them has to be the imposter. Meanwhile, humans were indeed strange creatures, Neeko thought, as she numbed the food within the outpost. So this was the short story that rounded up Neeko's lore. But now we need to have a look at Nidalee, because she played a decent part in her story as well. So let's start with Nidalee's bio. Her story starts in the magical jungles of Kumungu, a safe distance from the Great Sai, the harsh deserts plagued with the Voidborn. But we don't really know how Nidalee got there. But when she was a child, she was left alone in the jungle. Her scent brought closer a small group of cougars, a mother with her cubs. But instead of killing the child as an easy source of food, the mother sensed something familiar in Nidalee, and she adopted her as her own. Years passed and Nidalee grew with no connection to the other people or any kind of society. But still, as the rest of her pack preferred to use Fang and Claw, Nidalee learned how to take advantage of the jungle itself. She crafted healing substance from honey fruit, she picked up glowing flowers to illuminate the night, and she even figured out how to use explosive seeds to literally blow up aggressive merc wolves. But all wasn't fully under her control. Occasionally, Nidalee's body would start reshaping on its own, which wasn't too surprising considering that she was in a mysterious magic-ridden forest. But sometimes she would spontaneously catch a fever that would play tricks on her mind. Her vision would go blurry and she would follow the hazy silhouettes of 2 strange figures. She had no idea who they were, but somehow their presence brought her comfort, even though the cougars told her how horrible outsiders can be. Every summer, the Kilash would hunt in the forest for prestigious kills and trophies. We know about these rituals from the story of Rengar, who's also a Kilash hunter. But one summer, Nidalee's adopted mother fell while trying to chase the hunters away. But before they managed to finish her off, Nidalee howled with rage as she felt the spirit of jungle cats empower her. Suddenly, she was fully in control of her previously strange shaping abilities. And by combining the crafty side of her human form, together with the ferocious cougar form, Nidalee killed the would-be murderer. The other Kilash hissed at her, and Nidalee realized she could understand them. They cursed her as they retreated. Unfortunately, the cougar mother died from her wounds, and the surviving cubs accepted Nidalee as their new leader. Time passed and finally, Nidalee stumbled upon Neeko, a chameleon-like wanderer who freshly escaped the destruction of her island. The two became inseparable for a time. Nidalee delighted in mentoring her new companion, and they loved to explore the hidden corners of their jungle together. But eventually Neeko had to leave Nidalee, because Neeko wanted to follow her own destiny beyond the shores of Shurima, while Nidalee swore to protect her pack here, in her homelands. Nidalee's bio ended by mentioning that Nidalee herself wonders if she ever finds out what she even is, and why she was able to understand the Kilash during their encounter. So this pretty much confirms that there was nothing serious between Neeko and Nidalee, so everyone can calm down now. They were good friends, and Nidalee taught Neeko about the wildlife beyond her lost island. Nothing more. Which is a little bit disappointing, because I love it whenever we have 2 champions that we know interacting for a little bit longer. But to truly round up this entire chapter, we have to finish off with Nidalee's short story, Human Blood. The story starts with Nidalee traversing the jungle and stumbling upon a familiar place. It was a small and peaceful clearing full of life, water and fish to catch. But the calm air echoed the house of something in pain. So Nidalee snuck closer, only to see a Vestayan male with reptilian features. It was him who moaned in pain, although it was evident that he was full of rage. His shoulder was wounded and his tail was caught in a massive metal trap. Above this Vastaya stood a human, with a gun aimed at the lizard's head. Nidalee stepped out of her cover and crunched some leaves underfoot on purpose. This made the human turn in her direction instead. She knew how to handle humans. They were often disarmed by her appearance. and this encounter was no exception. The moment the man relaxed to impress Nidalee, she threw her spear at him and dove closer in her cougar form. The spear cut through the man's arm and made him fall on his back. Nidalee in her cougar form landed on top of him. She opened her jaws and slowly bit on the man's throat. Enough to draw blood, but not enough to kill him. With fear evident from the man's shriek, Nidalee transformed back into her human form, let the human escape, and freed the lizard man. At first the lizard man was angry that Nidalee let the human go, but Nidalee then pointed to the trail of blood he left behind. Her plan was to follow it to see if there are other invaders. The lizard man then asked Nidalee why did she call the man a human. After all, Nidalee was obviously also a human. But she refused. She said she is Vastaya. But the lizard man argued that there are no Vastaya like her. She must be human. But Nidalee just ignored him and fixed his wounds. She then asked him to join her on her hunt tonight, to which the lizard man nodded. We also learned his name. He was called Kulkan. Later that night, during the hunt, they did indeed find a camp where the man retreated. His 3 companions were drinking, dancing and laughing, specifically at his embarrassment with his wild lady he described. But most importantly, none of them listened to his warnings. Later, after drinking too much ale, the man had to answer nature's call and he snuck away. But when he refastened his belt, he noticed the camp behind him was suddenly silent and dark. He froze in place when Nidalee emerged from the darkness, and this time his throat crunched beneath her teeth. That's pretty much all the story behind Neeko and Nidalee. As you can see, nothing major is happening between them. But if there is something you should remember, it would be Kulkan. I really don't think we have heard about a lizard Vastaya before. Obviously we knew such creatures would be around. But it wouldn't surprise me if this was a setup for a future champion. After all, League is like Pokemon. We have a crocodile, we have a snake, but we don't have a playable lizard character yet. Unless you count Ezreal. Hey, did you know that we have social media and Twitch where we talk about other League facts and stories? And did you know that we have neat mugs and shirts too? The links to all of that will be below. And as always, thank you, come again.